Hollywood is a cutthroat business where dreams are made and broken in an instant. While we celebrate the stars who made it big, there's a darker side to Tinseltown that few talk about. The roles that were literally stolen from other actors' hands. From last-minute replacements to studio politics, these 15 stories reveal how some of cinema's most iconic performances almost belonged to completely different stars. Hugh Jackman steals Wolverine from Dougray Scott. The role that defined Hugh Jackman's career was never meant to be his. Scottish actor Dougray Scott was originally cast as Wolverine in the first X-Men film, but fate had other plans. Scott was stuck filming Mission Impossible 2 when production delays forced him to choose between Tom Cruise and Mutant Claws. He chose Tom Cruise, a decision that would haunt him forever. Director Bryan Singer was left scrambling with just days before filming. Enter Hugh Jackman, a virtually unknown Australian theater actor who auditioned during Singer's lunch break. Singer later admitted he didn't even want to see Jackman audition, thinking the role was already locked down. But sometimes the universe has a different plan. Jackman's 17-year tenure as Wolverine became one of the longest-running superhero portrayals in cinema history, launching him into superstardom while Scott remained a character actor. Michael J. Fox steals Marty McFly from Eric Stoltz. This might be the most famous casting theft in Hollywood history. Eric Stoltz was originally cast as Marty McFly in Back to the Future and actually filmed for 5 weeks before director Robert Zemeckis realized he'd made a terrible mistake. Stoltz was treating the role like a serious drama, completely missing the comedic timing that made the character work. The problem was that Michael J. Fox, who Zemeckis originally wanted, was locked into his TV contract for family ties. But after seeing Stoltz's dailies, the filmmakers knew they had to act fast. They fired Stoltz and convinced Fox's TV producers to let him film at night after his TV shooting wrapped. The decision cost an additional $3 million and required reshooting everything, but it saved the film from disaster. Fox's energetic performance turned Back to the Future into a cultural phenomenon, while Stoltz's footage became Hollywood legend. Viggo Mortensen steals Aragorn from Stuart Townsend. The Lord of the Rings trilogy almost had a completely different Aragorn. Irish actor Stuart Townsend was originally cast as the Ranger King and spent months training and preparing for the role. But after 2 months of rehearsals, Peter Jackson made the brutal decision that Townsend looked too young for the weathered warrior. Viggo Mortensen got the call just 1 day before filming was scheduled to begin. He literally learned about Middle-earth during his flight to New Zealand. The pressure was immense. New Line Cinema would only approve Mortensen after seeing the first day's rushes. One bad performance could have killed the entire trilogy. But Mortensen's rugged intensity and commitment to the role created one of fantasy cinema's most beloved characters. Meanwhile, Townsend watched his career-defining opportunity slip away to become someone else's legend. Will Smith steals Independence Day from Ethan Hawke. Before Will Smith became the king of summer blockbusters, directors Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin had to fight tooth and nail to cast him in Independence Day. The role of Captain Stephen Hiller was originally offered to Ethan Hawke, who turned it down because he thought the script was terrible. What a mistake that turned out to be. But even after Hawke's rejection, 20th Century Fox fought against casting Smith, fearing he couldn't sell the movie overseas. The studio executives told Emmerich and Devlin flat out, "We don't like Will Smith." The filmmakers had to threaten to walk away from the project entirely to get Smith cast. The result? Independence Day became the second highest grossing film of all time at that point, launching Smith into the stratosphere of A-list stardom. Hawke, meanwhile, continued making critically acclaimed but commercially smaller films, never achieving the blockbuster success that could have been his. Harrison Ford steals Indiana Jones from Tom Selleck. One of cinema's most iconic heroes almost had a mustache. Tom Selleck was originally cast as Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark, but his commitment to the TV series Magnum P.I. created an impossible scheduling conflict. CBS refused to release him from his contract, forcing Selleck to watch his dream role slip away. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg were devastated, but they had to move fast. Harrison Ford wasn't even on their original list. They wanted an unknown actor. But Ford's previous work with Lucas in Star Wars had proven his action hero credentials. Ford's rugged charisma and dry humor created a character that became a cultural icon. The Indiana Jones franchise would go on to define adventure cinema for decades. Selleck got his TV success with Magnum P.I. but he never stopped wondering what might have been if he'd wielded that whip instead. Jamie Dornan steals Christian Grey from Charlie Hunnam. The role that launched 1,000 fan theories almost went to a very different actor. Charlie Hunnam was originally cast as Christian Grey in 50 Shades of Grey opposite Dakota Johnson. He'd even done successful chemistry reads and was excited about the project after reading the book. But Hunnam was caught in an impossible situation. He still had to finish the final season of Sons of Anarchy, and he'd also committed to star in his friend Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak. The scheduling conflicts became insurmountable, and Hunnam had to make the painful decision to walk away from what would become a massive franchise. Jamie Dornan stepped in, and while the films received mixed reviews, they became box office gold. Hunnam's career continued successfully, but he missed out on becoming a household name in the way that only a massive franchise can provide. Michelle Pfeiffer steals Catwoman from Annette Bening. Tim Burton's Batman Returns almost had a very different Catwoman. Annette Bening was originally cast in the role after Burton saw her stunning performance in The Grifters. She was perfect for Burton's dark, twisted vision of Gotham's most dangerous feline. But life had other plans. Bening discovered she was pregnant and had to leave the production early in pre-production. Burton scrambled to find a replacement, considering everyone from Jennifer Jason Leigh to Madonna. But when Michelle Pfeiffer stepped into the leather catsuit, she created something magical. Pfeiffer's performance as Catwoman became the gold standard for the character, sexy, dangerous, and completely unhinged. Her portrayal is still considered the definitive version of Catwoman decades later. Bening went on to have a successful career, but she never got another chance to play a character quite as iconic as the one that slipped through her claws. Anthony Hopkins steals Hannibal Lecter from Gene Hackman. The most chilling villain in cinema history almost had a completely different face. Gene Hackman was originally attached to both star in and direct The Silence of the Lambs. The veteran actor had the perfect resume for the calculating cannibal. He'd proven his ability to play complex, morally ambiguous characters. But Hackman ultimately found the material too dark and violent for his tastes. He walked away from both the starring role and the director's chair, feeling the story was too disturbing. This opened the door for Jonathan Demme to direct, and for Anthony Hopkins to create one of cinema's most memorable villains. Hopkins' performance was so unsettling that it scared his co-star Jodie Foster during filming. Despite being on screen for only 16 minutes, Hopkins dominated the film and won the Academy Award for Best Actor. His portrayal of Hannibal Lecter became a cultural touchstone, launching a franchise and cementing Hopkins' place in film history. Hackman's moral compass cost him one of the most iconic roles in cinema. Christian Bale steals American Psycho from Leonardo DiCaprio. One of the most controversial films of the 2000s almost starred one of Hollywood's biggest heartthrobs. Leonardo DiCaprio was originally cast as Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, coming off his massive success in Titanic. The casting seemed perfect. DiCaprio's boyish good looks would have made Bateman's violence even more disturbing. But DiCaprio faced enormous pressure from outside interest groups who condemned his participation in such a controversial film. With his massive teen fan base, many felt he shouldn't be associated with such dark material. DiCaprio also struggled with the subject matter himself, wanting to make Bateman more sympathetic and humane. The pressure became too much, and DiCaprio dropped out, taking director Oliver Stone with him. The producers brought back original director Mary Harron, who immediately fought to get Christian Bale back on board. Bale had been attached to the project earlier, but was pushed out when DiCaprio came aboard. Bale's performance as Patrick Bateman became a cult classic, showcasing his incredible range and willingness to completely transform for a role. The film launched him toward A-list status, while DiCaprio had to wait for roles like The Departed to show his darker side. Geena Davis steals A League of Their Own from Deborah Winger. One of the most beloved sports films of all time almost had a completely different leading lady. Deborah Winger was originally cast as Dottie Hinson in A League of Their Own, the talented catcher who leads the Rockford Peaches to glory. But Winger had a problem with one of her co-stars. When Madonna was cast in a supporting role, Winger walked off the set. Officially, she quit due to a back injury, but everyone knew the real reason. She refused to work with the pop star turned actress. This created a massive problem for director Penny Marshall. The rest of the cast had spent months training to convincingly play professional baseball players. Geena Davis was brought in just days before filming began, with almost no time to learn the sport she'd need to master on screen. But Davis rose to the challenge, creating a performance that was both athletically convincing and emotionally resonant. Her portrayal of Dottie became one of the most beloved characters in sports cinema. Winger's star power might have made the film even bigger, but Davis proved that sometimes the replacement can be perfect casting. Robin Williams steals Good Will Hunting from Rob Reiner. Good Will Hunting's most memorable performance almost didn't happen. The role of therapist Sean Maguire was originally offered to Rob Reiner, who turned it down to focus on directing. This opened the door for Robin Williams to create one of his most powerful dramatic performances. Williams's casting completely changed the dynamic of the film. His ability to balance comedy and deep emotional truth brought a warmth to Sean Maguire that made his relationship with Will Hunting feel authentic. The famous "It's Not Your Fault" scene became one of cinema's most emotional moments. Javier Bardem steals No Country for Old Men from Benicio del Toro. One of the most terrifying villains in modern cinema almost had a completely different face. Benicio del Toro was originally considered for the role of Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men, the coin-flipping killer who haunts the film's every scene. But the Coen brothers ultimately decided that del Toro's intense, brooding screen presence wasn't quite right for their vision of Chigurh. They wanted someone who could be both ordinary and absolutely terrifying. Enter Javier Bardem, whose chilling performance created one of cinema's most unforgettable villains. Bardem's Chigurh was so disturbing that he scared even the hardened crew members on set. His cold, methodical approach to violence, combined with that haunting bowl cut, created a character that audiences couldn't shake. Jennifer Lawrence steals Katniss from Hailee Steinfeld. The role that launched Jennifer Lawrence into superstardom almost went to another young actress. Hailee Steinfeld, fresh off her Oscar-nominated performance in True Grit, was heavily considered for Katniss Everdeen in The Hunger Games. Her age and proven dramatic abilities made her a strong contender. But author Suzanne Collins had a specific vision for Katniss. She needed someone who could convey both vulnerability and strength, someone audiences would believe could survive the games. Lawrence's audition tape showed exactly that combination. Her ability to convey Katniss's internal struggle while maintaining her outer strength convinced the filmmakers she was their girl on fire. Lawrence's performance across 4 films turned The Hunger Games into a billion-dollar franchise and made her one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood. She became the face of young adult cinema and parlayed that success into an Oscar-winning career. Steinfeld has had a successful career, but she never achieved the massive stardom that The Hunger Games could have provided. Johnny Depp steals Jack Sparrow from Hugh Jackman. The most iconic pirate in cinema history almost sailed under a different flag. Hugh Jackman was originally considered for Captain Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean before he became synonymous with Wolverine. Disney executives were looking for a traditional action hero type for their pirate adventure, but Johnny Depp had a completely different vision for the character. Drawing inspiration from Keith Richards and cartoon skunk Pepe Le Pew, Depp created a character that was equal parts dangerous and comedic. Disney executives were initially horrified by Depp's eccentric interpretation, but director Gore Verbinski fought for the actor's unique vision. Depp's Jack Sparrow became a cultural phenomenon, turning what could have been a standard adventure film into a massive franchise. His performance was so iconic that it's impossible to imagine anyone else in the role. Jackman's more traditional heroic approach might have made a good pirate, but Depp created something truly special. Christopher Plummer steals all the money in the world from Kevin Spacey. This might be the most dramatic role theft in Hollywood history. Kevin Spacey had already completed filming All the Money in the World when the sexual assault allegations against him broke just weeks before the film's release. Director Ridley Scott faced an impossible decision: scrap the entire film or do something unprecedented. Scott chose to reshoot every single scene featuring Spacey, with Christopher Plummer taking over the role of J. Paul Getty. The logistics were insane. They had just weeks to coordinate schedules, rebuild sets, and match the lighting and continuity of scenes shot months earlier. Plummer had to learn his lines while makeup artists transformed him into the oil tycoon. The veteran actor delivered a performance so strong that he received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. The film was saved, Spacey was erased from cinema history, and Plummer showed that sometimes the best performances come from the most challenging circumstances. These stories remind us that Hollywood success often comes down to timing, luck, and being ready when opportunity knocks. While these 15 actors stole roles from other stars, They also seized their moments and created performances that defined their careers.